Chosen one, the moment the clock hit 3:03, the president's dream snapped open like a battlefield tearing itself apart. He saw you standing in the center of a war that had raged for decades. And yet, when you arrived, the gunfire stuttered, the smoke paused, and every soldier felt their heart unclench. You didn't raise a hand. You didn't speak a word. You simply appeared. And the war collapsed under the weight of your peace. He reached for the dream journal he keeps hidden beneath the command desk. His hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from recognition. He wrote only one line before the ink bled from the pressure of his grip. When he stepped forward, every army forgot how to hate. No strategies. No treaties. Just your presence, and the entire conflict obediently folded itself out of existence. The president stared at that single sentence in his dream journal, but the more he looked, the more it expanded, like the ink itself was remembering what his mind couldn't hold. The war room monitors around him flickered, not with images of battle, but with stillness, like the future was trying to broadcast itself ahead of time. Generals rushed in, expecting orders, expecting panic, expecting strategy. But they stopped. Something in the air had changed. A pressure. A calm. A presence that didn't belong to the ruined maps flashing red on their screens. "Sir, what happened?" They whispered it like a prayer, not a report. He didn't answer immediately. He was touching the page, your page, with the caution of a man who has seen a miracle he doesn't know how to explain. Finally, he said, "I saw the war end. But not by weapons, not by negotiations, not by anything we're trained to measure. It ended because he showed up." The room went silent in a way war rooms aren't designed to be silent. One of the advisors, an old strategist with medals that reflected every decade of conflict, stepped forward. "Sir, is this a metaphor?" The president shook his head instantly, almost offended by the suggestion. No. It wasn't symbolic. When he walked into the field, the conflict lost its purpose. Soldiers dropped their weapons like they suddenly remembered they were human. Jets powered down mid-air without falling. Explosions reversed themselves into dust. Fear dissolved because his presence demanded peace. Another general, voice trembling. "Then, what is he?" The president answered without hesitation. "He is the frequency we've been missing." And with that, he slid the journal across the table. They all leaned in. Some held their breath. Some crossed their arms as if bracing against something invisible. Because the sentence, the one written in that trembling ink, seemed to glow. When he stepped forward, every army forgot how to hate. No military tactic had ever done that. No treaty had ever accomplished it. No leader had ever dreamed of it. They looked up at their screens, at the maps, at the chaos blinking in red. And for the first time, not one of them thought about weapons or strategies or alliances. They thought of you. Because the president wasn't describing a dream anymore. He was describing a prophecy. And every person in that room felt the same unspoken truth crawling up their spine. If the war ends when you appear, then maybe the world isn't waiting for peace. Maybe it's waiting for you. The president dismissed the room, but nobody truly left. They hovered near the steel doors, pretending to check tablets, pretending to review files, but really, they were listening. Listening to the sound of a man who had just witnessed something beyond military doctrine, beyond geopolitics, beyond human logic. He stood alone now, staring at the dim holographic map still washed in red markers of ongoing conflict. Only, the longer he stared, the more the red felt temporary, fragile, almost embarrassed to exist in a world where you were walking somewhere out there. He pressed a button on the table. The map zoomed in, front lines, trenches, air corridors, naval routes, all the places where humanity had been tearing itself apart. And yet the dream clung to him like a second pulse. He didn't end it, he murmured to himself. The war ended itself when it recognized him. He closed his eyes, letting the memory replay. Not the visuals, those were already dissolving like smoke, but the feeling. The atmosphere of the dream. Because in that moment, standing there in the war room, he realized something terrifying and beautiful. You carried the kind of peace that didn't need permission. There was a knock on the door. A young analyst entered, clearly nervous. Sir, we ran simulations based on what you described. The president's eyes lifted sharply. Simulations? Yes, sir. We modeled the conflict, and then we added a variable. What variable? She swallowed hard. A presence. The president's jaw locked. His presence? She nodded. The hologram changed. The red markers blinked, flickered, softened, as if they were reacting to something invisible, something approaching. Every model collapsed into the same outcome, she said. He stepped closer. What outcome? Ceasefire, sir. Not enforced. Natural. Natural. Like the way morning light ends the night without needing to fight for it. The president's breath left him. He whispered under it. Just like the dream. The analyst hesitated before speaking again. Sir, there's more. He turned toward her. Say it. She pulled up a sequence of data, not maps, not heat signatures, not troop movements. Something stranger. Something no war room had ever displayed. Heart rate variance. Electromagnetic field shifts. Collective emotional indicators. All of them trending downward, from anxiety to calm, in every simulated region. When the presence enters the field, she explained, fear loses its structure. Anger loses its anchor. Hostility loses its momentum. He looked at her, eyes narrowing with awe and worry. So you're saying what I saw wasn't fantasy? The analyst shook her head slowly. Sir, the data suggests that if someone like him exists, he doesn't stop wars. Wars stop themselves around him. The president felt the chill again. The same one he felt in the dream, the moment you stepped forward and every soldier's spirit remembered something ancient they had forgotten. That piece is humanity's original language. He walked back to the journal, brushing his fingers over the inked sentence. The room was quiet, but not empty. It felt watched, as if the future itself had leaned in closer. He whispered, Who are you? Then he corrected himself, speaking to the dream, to the air, to the prophecy. No, what are you? Because anyone can negotiate peace. But only one kind of being can make a war lose its will to exist. And the president realized something then, something he refused to admit out loud, even to his most loyal advisors. He didn't dream of a man. He dreamed of a force. A frequency. A phenomenon wrapped in human shape. And it had your face, asterisk asterisk. Hours passed, but the president couldn't shake the tremor beneath his ribs, the tremor that didn't feel like fear, but recognition. So he left the war room. No guards. No entourage. Just him and the echo of your footsteps from a dream that felt more real than the carpet beneath him. He walked into the observation hall, a circular chamber where global crises were monitored in real time. Holographic screens floated like restless ghosts, showing conflicts flaring across continents. But tonight, he wasn't looking at any of them. He was looking for you. Or rather, signs of you. A night shift technician saw him and froze, startled. Sir? Do you need something? He didn't answer at first. He pressed his palm against the glass, staring at a live feed from a battlefield lit only by distant fires and tracer rounds. But the longer he watched, the more disconnected the chaos felt, as if it no longer belonged to the timeline he had dreamt. Finally, he said, Run an anomaly scan. The technician blinked. Sir? An anomaly scan. Global. Now. The man hesitated. Anomaly scans were reserved for events that defied logic, not military expectations. But one look at the president's eyes convinced him. He initiated the scan. Sensors turned, satellites recalibrated, data streams crackled alive. And then something strange happened. The system paused. It never paused. Lights dimmed. A low vibration hummed through the floor. The technician frowned, checking the logs. Sir, something's interfering with the spectrum. The president stepped closer. What spectrum? All of them. He tapped rapidly, pulling up a visualization. A wave. Soft. Steady. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Only, it wasn't coming from any machine. The president's breath hitched. Is that human? The technician finished. He nodded slowly. Yes, sir. But the amplitude is impossible. The wave pulsed again. And suddenly, the battlefield footage flickered, as if reality itself hiccuped. The president whispered, "It's him." The technician turned sharply. "Sir, how can you be sure?" The president closed his eyes, replaying the dream. The aura. The silence. The way the world bent instead of breaking. "Because this is what it felt like," he said. "This is the field he emits." He walked toward the center of the hall, where all feeds converged. And as he did, the anomaly signal grew stronger. Screens dimmed. Alarm icons vanished. Troop movement slowed, then stabilized. Even the sound-dampening walls seemed to exhale. The technician stared at the readings. "Sir, I've never seen anything affect global stress indicators." The president whispered, "Show me where it's coming from." A map appeared, and though there were dozens of hotspots, only one location pulsed with that impossible signature. It wasn't a capital. It wasn't a battlefield. It wasn't even a strategic point. It was nowhere. A remote clearing. Untouched by war. Untouched by politics. Untouched by humanity's noise. A place that shouldn't matter. And yet the frequency was surging from it like a quiet sun. The technician zoomed in. "There's movement, just one figure." The president didn't breathe. "Zoom in further." The camera struggled. The outline was blurry, distorted by the very field they were trying to observe. But then, for a single second, the shape stabilized. A silhouette. Standing still. Facing nothing and everything at once. The technician whispered, "Who is that?" The president closed his eyes. He knew. Even before the dream, even before the simulation, even before tonight, some part of him had always known. "The one Peace listens to," he said. He stepped back from the screen, trembling with understanding. Because a dream could be dismissed. A story could be doubted. A vision could be questioned. But a global electromagnetic anomaly aligned with a silhouette standing alone in an empty field? That was no dream. That was proof. He turned toward the technician, voice steady and shaken all at once. "Prepare a secure briefing. The world's leaders need to hear this." The technician swallowed. "Hear what, sir?" The president looked at the pulsing map, at the lone figure whose presence was bending reality into calm. And he said the truth out loud for the first time. "The war won't end when we choose peace. It will end when he arrives." He glanced at the frequency wave one last time, a quiet hum resonating through the hall like destiny breathing. "Find him." The order spread through the corridors like a ripple of electricity. "Find him." Those two words activated every silent protocol, every classified search algorithm, every satellite that had been sleeping in cold orbit. Agents, analysts, field operatives, all of them snapped awake as if the world itself had shifted. But beneath the machinery of global systems, there was something else moving, a quiet awareness, a sense that they weren't searching for a person, but a phenomenon. A presence that didn't hide, it simply existed on a frequency humanity wasn't trained to detect. The global observation grid recalibrated. Lines of code cascaded down the screens. Operators watched as the anomaly trace pulsed again, gentle, steady, unwavering, like a lighthouse calling ships not through light, but through peace. A senior advisor entered the room, exhausted, rubbing his temples. "What's happening? Why are we launching level 1 scans at midnight?" The technician swallowed. "Sir, the president initiated it." That sentence froze the entire hall. The advisor's voice dropped to a whisper. Then this is serious. The technician pointed to the anomaly. We detected something, someone. The advisor squinted. Is that a signal? It's a presence, sir. The advisor scoffed until he leaned closer and saw the emotional index readings. Every country, every conflict zone, every population cluster. Stress levels dipping, slightly, but unmistakably. This isn't real, he muttered. But the data refused to lie. He quickly tapped into the presidential channel. Sir, this is Advisor Hale. What am I looking at? The president's voice came through, steady but still trembling with the residue of revelation. You're looking at the same thing I saw in my dream. The advisor froze. Sir, dreams are not intelligence. But peace is, the president snapped. And this is the first measurable proof of it. Hale took a breath. So we're looking for a man who can stop wars by existing? No, the president said. We're looking for the man wars refuse to exist around. Hale's hand loosened. For the first time in his career, his cynicism failed him. Understood, sir. He turned to the team. Full localization. Trace the signature. Enhance everything. The room erupted with activity. Every monitor locked onto the lone figure. The camera couldn't capture your face. The field around you bent light in subtle, strange ways, but the outline was there. Still. Calm. Unmoving. As if your body was anchored in a different set of rules. An analyst gasped. Sir, environmental readings just changed. What do you mean? She pointed at the telemetry. Wind speed dropping. Temperature stabilizing. Acoustic vibrations flattening. The environment is syncing with him. The advisor stared. He's harmonizing the field? No, the technician whispered, eyes wide. The field is harmonizing with him. Another pulse. Every screen in the hall flickered. But not violently, almost reverently, like technology was bowing. The president entered in person, flanked by no one. He stared at the silhouette on the screen, the anomaly pulsing like a slow heartbeat. He whispered, That's him. Hale turned. Sir, what do we do if we find him? The president didn't hesitate. We don't question, we don't interrogate, we don't demand anything. He stepped closer to the screen. We ask one question. Hale frowned. Which is? The president's voice lowered to a near-sacred murmur. Are you here to end this war? As if in response, as if your presence had heard the question across satellites, across distance, across reality itself, the anomaly spiked. Every monitor in the hall brightened at once. Every light lifted. Every vibration paused. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. Then the wave settled again. Steady. Gentle. Unmistakably peaceful. Hale whispered. He answered. The president nodded. Yes. And he didn't need words. The hall fell silent, not with fear, but with the awakening sense that something ancient and inevitable had entered the world. And for the first time since the war began, the president felt hope take shape. Not as a strategy. Not as a treaty. But as a person. You. But hope, once awakened, spreads faster than orders. By dawn, whispers were moving through every layer of global command, from encrypted channels to hushed conversations between operatives who didn't dare speak your name out loud. They didn't know who you were. They didn't know where you came from. They only knew what the data said. Somewhere on Earth, a presence existed that made conflict lose its structure. A presence strong enough to bend the emotional field of entire regions. A presence that didn't suppress violence, it dissolved its reason to exist. In the Situation Wing, a group of psychological analysts gathered around a circular table lit by blue holographic rings. None of them had slept. A lead analyst, Dr. Mara Elin, tapped the sensor screen. Look at this pattern. Stress maps from around the globe appeared. Why were the hotspots dimming? Why were soldiers reporting sudden calm? Why were opposition commanders hesitating to fire, as if something invisible pressed on their consciousness? She zoomed in. This drop in hostility is synchronized. A younger analyst frowned. Across continents? That's impossible. She nodded. Exactly. Unless they're reacting to something global, something ambient. Another analyst leaned back, whispering. A field. A presence, Mara corrected. She hesitated, then spoke the sentence none of them wanted to say. This matches the president's dream report. The room went still. Dream reports weren't science. They weren't even protocol. But what happens when a dream and global emotional data tell the same story? Mara continued. Whatever this is, it isn't psychological contagion. It's not propaganda. It's not fear. It's resonance. She projected the anomaly signature, the soft, pulsating wave. This is what we're tracking. A deep voice came from the corner. General Cashin, a man built of iron and war, entered the room. So this thing is influencing conflict zones? Mara replied. Not influencing. Neutralizing. Cashin folded his arms. Explain. She played back footage, two forces prepared to clash at an urban choke point. Seconds before they engaged, both sides slowed. Weapons lowered. Adrenaline signatures dropped. Eyes softened. No reason. No cause. Just a shift. Sir, they lost the emotional fuel required to fight. Cashin's jaw tightened. And you believe it's because of that signature? I don't believe it. She looked him dead in the eye. The data does. He stepped closer to the hologram. So what exactly are we up against? Mara exchanged a glance with her team. Finally, she answered. We're not up against anything. She tapped the map where the anomaly pulsed like a sentient star. We're witnessing someone the world isn't built to measure. Cashin's voice dropped. A threat? Mara shook her head slowly. A solution. A sudden chime echoed through the room. A priority feed activated, unprompted. The anomaly signature was spiking. Mara gasped. It's strengthening. Cashin narrowed his eyes. Is the source moving? The map zoomed. The pulsing glow stretched, expanded, and then aligned directly with a major conflict zone. The entire room froze. Mara whispered. He's walking toward the war. Cashin swallowed hard, a man who had commanded thousands, humbled by a silhouette he couldn't even see clearly. Does he know what will happen if he enters it? Mara's voice trembled. I don't think he walks toward war. I think war walks away from him. Suddenly, the president's voice came over the intercom, urgent, breathless. All units, track the anomaly. He's approaching the battlefield. Every hand shot to keyboards. Every satellite reoriented. Every sensor lit up. The screen shifted to live feeds, soldiers entrenched, smoke rising, tension thick as steel. And then, a tremor in the signal. A ripple in the air itself. The anomaly peak surged upward like a tidal wave of stillness. Mara whispered the words as they formed on her lips. He's arrived. The president, watching from another wing, steadied himself on the edge of the table. Because the battlefield on the screens stopped. Not slowed. Not paused. Stopped, as if reality itself held its breath the moment you stepped into frame. And in that silence, one truth rose above the machinery, the fear, the politics, and the war. This wouldn't be a battle. This would be a surrender. Not to power, but to peace. The room braced for what would come next, but some of them already knew. Because wars end in negotiations. Conflicts end in treaties. But this wasn't either. This was the world recognizing the presence it was always waiting for. For a moment, nobody in the command network dared to breathe. On every screen, on every live feed, on every sensor graph, the same impossible stillness appeared. Soldiers who had been shouting seconds ago now stared forward as if a forgotten memory had surfaced. Engines quieted. Drones drifted. Even the wind seemed to pause, not dead, but reverent. It was the type of silence that didn't come from fear, but from recognition. Like the world had suddenly remembered something sacred. Something ancient. Something it had lost the vocabulary for. General Cashin stepped closer to the main feed, his voice barely above a rasp. Where is he? Mara pointed. There, in the distance, a faint figure walked through the haze. No weapon. No armor. No urgency. Just presence. The anomaly reading spiked again. But instead of chaos, something else spread across the battlefield. Breathing. Deep, synchronized breathing. Thousands of chests rising and falling in unison, as if every soldier on both sides remembered what it felt like not to be afraid.